Called too ugly to be chosen, the Omega watched the Alpha King rise and claim her before all. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the main character. Sophia Turner, an Omega, had always been considered the least desirable in her society. With her pale skin, delicate features, and shy demeanor, she was the type of person people overlooked. But Sophia was more than just her appearance. Deep down, she carried a sense of determination, a quiet strength that even she didn't fully realize yet. In the world she lived in, being an Omega meant one thing: weakness. Omegas were supposed to be gentle, subservient, and often seen as nothing more than a tool for alphas to claim. Yet, there was something about Sophia that felt different. Despite her self-doubt, she had always believed that there was more to her than the world saw. Sophia's life had always been one of quiet observation. She watched from the sidelines as others were chosen, admired, and adored. Her classmates, friends, and even family had always dismissed her as insignificant. They never saw the value in her, and to be honest, neither did she, at least not until now. The Alpha King, Kingston Blackwell, the most powerful and influential alpha in the entire kingdom, had always been the epitome of strength, beauty, and power. Everyone adored him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features and a commanding presence. He was the embodiment of everything an alpha should be: strong, authoritative, and irresistible. Yet, Kingston never gave Sophia a second glance. She had always been invisible to him, just another face in the crowd. Until one day, everything changed. It was during one of the royal gatherings when their paths crossed for the first time. Sophia had been standing at the edge of the room, unnoticed, as usual. But then, something happened. Kingston's eyes landed on her, and for the first time in her life, Sophia felt seen. It wasn't the usual dismissal or the cold indifference she had grown accustomed to. No, this was different. Kingston's gaze was filled with something she had never expected: curiosity. It was as if, in that moment, he saw beyond the shell she had built around herself, beyond the labels of ugly and unworthy. He saw the strength she had always kept hidden. Sophia could hardly believe it. For years, she had been told she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't worth anyone's time. And yet, here was the Alpha King, the one person she never thought would look her way, staring at her as if she were someone of value. Her heart raced, her palms grew sweaty. She had no idea what to do with this sudden attention. But before she could process it, Kingston turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving her standing there, stunned. Was this a sign? Could it be that everything she had believed about herself was wrong? Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't too ugly to be chosen after all. She couldn't help but wonder what the future held. For the first time, Sophia began to believe in the possibility of something more than the life she had always known. And so, her journey began, one that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and the world around her. The next few days were a whirlwind for Sophia Turner. She couldn't stop thinking about the moment when Kingston Blackwell, the Alpha King, had looked at her. His eyes, so intense and filled with curiosity, had shaken her to her core. She found herself replaying that moment over and over in her mind, unable to understand why he had paid attention to her, of all people. She had always considered herself plain, invisible even. To the world, she was just another Omega, destined for a life of being overlooked, dismissed, and never truly seen. But now, for some reason, Kingston had looked at her like she was someone worth noticing. What did it mean? Why did he choose that moment to look her way? Was it just an accident, or was there something more to it? These questions kept her awake at night, her mind racing with possibilities. Meanwhile, life continued. Sophia went about her daily routine, keeping to herself as she always had. She spent her days at the Omega quarters, where she was often surrounded by other Omegas, many of whom were much more outspoken and confident than she was. Despite her quiet nature, Sophia was not without friends. Her best friend, Lily, had been by her side for as long as she could remember. Lily was one of those people who never let anyone feel like they didn't belong. She had a warmth that drew people in, a personality that could light up a room. It was the complete opposite of Sophia's introverted nature. Yet, despite their differences, the two had been inseparable. "Sophia, you're really not going to tell me what's going on, are you?" Lily asked one afternoon, as they sat in their small shared room. She raised an eyebrow, noticing the faraway look in Sophia's eyes. Sophia blinked, bringing herself back to the present. "What do you mean?" she replied, trying to sound casual. Lily crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Oh, come on. I know you. Sophomore, something happened, didn't it? I can see it in your eyes. Spill it." Sophia hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to explain. She had never been one to share her emotions openly, especially when it came to matters of the heart. "It's nothing, really," she said, avoiding Lily's gaze. But Lily wasn't fooled. "Don't lie to me," she said gently, sitting down beside her. "You've been staring off into space ever since that royal gathering. And I know you saw him, didn't you? Kingston Blackwell, the Alpha King." Sophia felt a flush spread across her cheeks. She wasn't sure why, but the mere mention of Kingston's name made her feel both nervous and excited. She nodded, biting her lip. "I saw him. But it doesn't mean anything." Lily's eyes sparkled with mischief. "You think it doesn't mean anything?" "Sophia, I've seen the way he looked at you. He was paying attention to you. And that's not something that happens every day. Do you know how many Omegas would give anything to get noticed by someone like him?" Sophia's heart raced at Lily's words. She had been trying to convince herself that Kingston's gaze was nothing more than a passing moment, something that would fade into the past. But now, hearing Lily's perspective, she couldn't help but wonder if it was more than that. Was it possible that Kingston saw something in her that no one else had? Could she really be the one to catch the attention of the Alpha King, the most powerful man in the kingdom? The thought seemed so far-fetched, so impossible. But deep down, a small part of her wanted to believe it. "I don't know, Lily," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It just feels so unreal." Lily smiled warmly and placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. "Sometimes, Soph, the impossible happens when you least expect it. Just don't close yourself off from it. You never know what could be waiting for you." Sophia couldn't help but smile back at her friend. Lily's words gave her hope, something she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in years, Sophia felt like there might be a possibility for something more in her life. Maybe Kingston Blackwell wasn't just a distant dream. Maybe, just maybe, he was the beginning of something new. Something she had never thought she deserved, but now dared to imagine. With that thought, Sophia stood up, ready to face whatever came next. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she was willing to find out. As the days passed, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that her life was on the verge of changing. Kingston Blackwell, the Alpha King, had already made her question everything she knew about herself. After that brief moment of eye contact at the royal gathering, something inside her had shifted. She began to see the world differently, and more importantly, she began to see herself differently. The thought that Kingston, the most powerful alpha in the kingdom, could find her worthy of his attention was both thrilling and terrifying. She couldn't tell if she was simply imagining things, or if there was truly something more between them. The uncertainty kept her up at night, her mind racing with what-ifs and maybes. But despite the confusion, one thing was clear. She couldn't let this moment slip by without exploring it further. She had never felt this way before. Every glance, every moment of attention from Kingston now seemed amplified. Every encounter with him, whether brief or fleeting, carried weight. It was as if fate was pulling her towards something greater, something she had never dared to dream of. Days later, during another royal event, Sophia found herself once again in the presence of Kingston. This time, she wasn't standing at the edges of the crowd. No, this time, she was among the guests, invited to join the gathering by a colleague. She tried her best to keep a low profile, to blend in as much as possible, but that became increasingly difficult when Kingston walked into the room. His presence was undeniable, commanding attention from everyone around him. Sophia felt her heart race as he entered, the room seeming to grow silent in his wake. She tried to steady her breath, reminding herself that she was just one of many people in this grand hall. But when her eyes met his across the room, she felt a spark, a connection that was impossible to ignore. Kingston's gaze was different this time. Instead of the curiosity that had once flickered in his eyes, there was something deeper, something more intentional. It was as though he had been searching for her among the crowd, waiting for the right moment to approach. Sophia's pulse quickened as he started making his way toward her. Her hands suddenly felt clammy, and she struggled to maintain her composure. This was no ordinary interaction. This was the Alpha King, the man who had the power to reshape her life with a single decision. And yet, here he was, walking toward her. Kingston stopped in front of her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, with the weight of everything that had come before and everything that might come after. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm and steady. "Sophia Turner," he said, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "I've been waiting for this moment." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what to say. Part of her wanted to ask him why he was here, why he was looking at her like that. But another part of her, one that had been buried deep inside her for so long, wanted to embrace the possibility, to take a chance on this moment. "I didn't expect to see you here," she managed to say, her voice soft. Kingston's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "I could say the same. But fate has a way of bringing people together, doesn't it?" His words were simple, but they carried a weight that Sophia couldn't quite grasp. It was as if he had been waiting for this encounter, waiting for the right moment to make his move. "Sophia," Kingston continued, his tone gentle yet firm, "I see something in you. Something more than what others see. And I'd like to get to know you better." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, everything around them seemed to fade away. It was as if time had slowed, leaving only the two of them in that shared space. Sophia didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to shout at him, to ask why someone like him would be interested in someone like her. But another part, the part that had long been hidden away, wanted to step forward and embrace this opportunity. She had spent so much of her life doubting herself, hiding away from the world. But here was Kingston, offering her a chance to be seen, to be valued. I don't know what to say," Sophia finally whispered. Kingston's smile softened, and he stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. "You don't need to say anything just yet. I'm not asking for anything from you. But I would like to know you, Sophia. And I think you'll find that what you've been looking for has been right in front of you all along." His words were both comforting and overwhelming. Sophia stood there, unsure of what to do next, but for the first time in her life, she felt like something was finally within reach. Something she had never thought possible. She didn't know where this would lead, but she was willing to find out. Kingston Blackwell, the Alpha King, had made it clear. This was just the beginning. "I'm not asking for anything from you." Kingston's voice was soft, yet carried a certain weight that made Sophia's heart race. His words seemed to echo in her mind long after he had spoken them. She had never been someone who easily opened up to others, and the idea of letting someone, especially someone as powerful as Kingston, into her world felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She had always been taught to remain small, to stay unnoticed, but here was an Alpha King, standing before her, telling her he wanted to know her better. It felt like a dream. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Sophia whispered, the words leaving her lips before she even realized it. Kingston's expression softened, and he gave her a reassuring smile. "There's no rush, Sophia. I'm not asking you to be anyone other than who you are. I just want to spend time with you, get to know you in a way that others don't. I believe there's more to you than anyone else sees, and I want to see that." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She had spent so much of her life trying to fit into a mold that wasn't meant for her. She had spent countless years hiding behind the walls she had built, never allowing herself to believe she deserved anything more than the life she had. And yet, Kingston's words, his presence, made her question everything. Could she really take that step? Could she open herself up to someone who saw her differently, who saw her as worthy, as valuable? She didn't know the answers to those questions, but one thing was clear. Kingston's interest in her was not something she could ignore. She had never felt this kind of pull before, a feeling that stretched deep inside her chest, urging her to step forward into the unknown. For the first time in a long while, Sophia allowed herself to consider the possibility of a different life, one where she wasn't just the quiet, overlooked Omega. She could feel her heart beating faster, her pulse quickening as Kingston's gaze never wavered from hers. There was an intensity in his eyes that made her feel both vulnerable and alive. She couldn't remember the last time anyone had looked at her like that, not even her own family. The idea of Kingston wanting to spend time with her, of him wanting to get to know the real Sophia, sent a wave of emotions crashing over her. She couldn't hide from it, not anymore. "I don't know how to be anyone other than what I've always been," she said softly, her voice shaking just a little. "I don't know how to change." Kingston's smile was gentle but firm. "You don't have to change, Sophia. I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you are. I'm just asking you to trust me. Trust that I see something in you that no one else does. Trust that I won't ask anything from you that you're not ready to give." His words settled deep into her heart, and, for the first time, she felt the weight of her own self-doubt begin to lift. Maybe she wasn't as invisible as she had always thought. Maybe there was a future for her, a future that didn't have to be confined by the limitations others had set for her. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm scared of what it might mean." Kingston took a step closer to her, his presence comforting and steady. "I know you're scared, Sophia. But sometimes, the things we're most afraid of are the things that bring us the most growth, the most joy. You don't have to face it alone. I'm here, and I'll be with you every step of the way." His words, full of promise and warmth, melted away some of the walls Sophia had spent years building around her heart. For the first time, she felt seen, not just by Kingston, but by herself. She wasn't just the Omega who had always been ignored. She wasn't just the girl who didn't fit in. She was someone who could stand beside an alpha king and be valued for who she truly was. As Kingston reached out and gently took her hand, Sophia felt a surge of emotion she had never known before. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she was ready to face it with open eyes. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hope. Hope for a future that could be hers if she only allowed herself to believe in it. The next few weeks passed in a haze for Sophia. Every day felt like a new chapter in her life, one that she never thought possible. She spent more time with Kingston, meeting him in private rooms, sharing long conversations about everything and nothing. He listened to her, really listened, in a way that made her feel like her thoughts and feelings mattered. No one had ever paid her this much attention, and certainly not someone of Kingston's status. He was an alpha king, powerful, respected, and yet, he treated her as if she were the most important person in the world. It was overwhelming, but in the best way possible. She had always known that her life was ordinary, that she would always be just another Omega in a society that prized alphas above all else. But Kingston made her believe that she could be more. "Sophia," Kingston said one evening, his voice steady but filled with something deeper. "You don't have to keep doubting yourself. I see the strength in you, and I want you to see it too. You've spent so long believing you're not enough, that you're invisible, but that's not true. You are more than what they've told you to be." The words settled in her heart, sinking deep, and for the first time in her life, she began to believe them. The weight of her own insecurities didn't feel so heavy anymore. Kingston made it seem like it was okay to be herself, that the parts of her she had kept hidden weren't weaknesses, but strengths. They were things that made her who she was, and for the first time, she wasn't ashamed of them. They were walking through the palace gardens one afternoon when Kingston turned to her, a serious look on his face. "Sophia, there's something I need to tell you. Something that's been on my mind for a while now." His tone made her heart skip a beat. She had never heard him sound so serious. "What is it?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. He took a deep breath, his hand gently brushing hers. "I don't want you to think I'm rushing you, but I can't ignore what's happening between us. I've never felt this way about anyone before. Not like this." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. Was he saying what she thought he was saying? She had always been cautious, always told herself to keep her distance. But the way he looked at her, the way he spoke, made her heart race. She didn't know how to respond, but she couldn't deny the feelings that had been growing inside her. "I feel the same," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've never felt like this before either." Kingston smiled, but it wasn't the usual confident smile she had come to know. This one was softer, more vulnerable. "Then let's not hide from it," he said, his voice low but full of conviction. "I'm not asking for anything more than your trust. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I want to be with you, Sophia. I believe in us." His words sent a shiver through her. She had spent so long hiding, so long believing she wasn't worthy of something like this. But Kingston saw her, truly saw her, in a way no one else ever had. For the first time, she wasn't invisible. She wasn't just the Omega who was overlooked and dismissed. She was someone who mattered. "I trust you," she said, her voice steady now. "I don't know what the future holds, but I'm willing to find out with you." Kingston's expression softened, and he gently cupped her face in his hands. "I'll never ask you to be anything other than who you are, Sophia. Just promise me that you'll let yourself believe in us, in what we can become." It was all so overwhelming, but in the best way. For once, Sophia wasn't afraid of what the future might bring. She was ready to take that first step, to believe that she could have something more than she had ever imagined. And as she looked up at Kingston, she realized that this was just the beginning. Together, they could face whatever came next. As days turned into weeks, Sophia began to feel like her life was on a path she had never thought possible. Kingston Blackwell, the Alpha King, had become a constant presence in her life. Their time together grew more frequent, and with each passing moment, the connection between them deepened. What had started as a small spark had now become a steady flame. They spent time together, talking about everything from trivial matters to their hopes and dreams. With Kingston, she felt seen for the first time in her life. He made her believe in herself, in a way that no one ever had. Sophia had always kept her feelings buried deep, afraid to show the world her true self. But Kingston had a way of making her feel safe, of encouraging her to open up, to trust that there was more to her than what others had seen. They had their quiet moments, their laughter, and their conversations that felt like they could last forever. Sophia had never experienced such peace, and yet, there were still moments of doubt, moments when the walls she had built around herself threatened to rise once more. The fear of being hurt, of being vulnerable, was always lurking in the back of her mind. But Kingston never pushed her, never rushed her. He was patient, always giving her the space to take her own time. "Sophia," he said one evening as they sat by the window, the soft light of the setting sun casting a warm glow over the room. "You've come a long way. I've seen it in you. I can feel the changes, the way you're opening up." She looked at him, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I didn't think I could ever change. I didn't think anyone could ever make me believe that I was worth something." Kingston reached over and gently took her hand. "You've always been worth something, Sophia. I knew that from the moment I saw you. I saw the strength in you that you couldn't see in yourself. I've watched you grow, and I'm proud of who you are." His words were like a balm for the wounds she had carried for so long. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she had to be anything other than who she was. She didn't have to pretend, to hide behind the walls of doubt and insecurity. With Kingston, she could be herself, and that was enough. "I'm still scared," she admitted, her voice soft. "I'm scared of what could happen, scared of what it all means." Kingston squeezed her hand, his gaze softening. "I know you're scared, and that's okay. It's natural to be afraid when you're stepping into something new, something that's so different from what you've known. But I promise you, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The words were simple, but they held so much weight. Sophia felt a sense of peace wash over her, knowing that Kingston wasn't just saying these things to make her feel better. He truly meant them. "You don't have to be afraid, Sophia," he said, his voice calm. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this." It was in that moment that Sophia realized something she had never fully understood before. It wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about being flawless or fitting into some mold. It was about acceptance, about finding someone who loved you for who you truly were, flaws and all. Kingston had given her that gift. He had shown her that she was enough, just as she was. And for the first time in her life, she believed it. There was still a part of her that was afraid, but she knew that with Kingston by her side, she could face whatever came next. As they sat there, hand in hand, looking out at the sunset, Sophia felt a sense of hope for the first time. Hope for herself, hope for the future, and most importantly, hope for the love that had slowly, quietly, but surely grown between her and the Alpha King. Together, they had already faced so much, and there was no telling what challenges lay ahead. But one thing was for sure, Sophia no longer had to walk this path alone. The days that followed were a mix of quiet reflection and newfound joy for Sophia. She had never imagined her life could change so dramatically, but now, it seemed as though the future she once thought out of reach was slowly becoming hers. Kingston had shown her what it meant to be valued, to be seen for who she truly was, and in return, She had learned to trust him with her heart. There was still a part of her that hesitated, a small voice in her mind that wondered if this was all too good to be true. But whenever that doubt crept in, Kingston's words and presence reassured her. "You are enough, Sophia. You always have been," he reminded her. He never grew tired of repeating it, and each time, she believed it a little more. Despite the comfort Kingston provided, Sophia still carried the weight of her past, a past that had shaped her into the person she was today. The quiet, overlooked Omega who had always been told she was not enough. But now, with Kingston by her side, she saw things differently. It wasn't just about being chosen. It was about believing in her own worth. As the weeks went by, Kingston became more and more a part of her life, and she began to feel like an equal, not someone who had been picked out of pity or obligation, but someone worthy of his attention, his affection. One evening, after another dinner in the palace, Kingston invited her to the royal gardens. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a warm golden glow over everything. They walked slowly, side by side, the cool evening air carrying the scent of blooming flowers. Kingston reached for her hand, his touch familiar and comforting. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you," he said, his voice gentle but filled with a certain gravity. Sophia's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face him, her eyes searching his. "What is it?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Kingston stopped walking and turned to her, his expression serious, but not cold. "I know we've been taking this slow, and I respect that. But I need you to know something," he said, his gaze never leaving hers. "I want you in my life, Sophia. Not just as someone I care about, but as someone I want by my side. Always." His words struck her like a bolt of lightning. She hadn't expected this, not so soon. But the sincerity in his voice made her heart swell. She had always been afraid of vulnerability, afraid that trusting someone might mean risking everything. But in that moment, all she felt was certainty. Kingston had never asked for her to change, never asked for anything other than her trust. And now, he was offering her something she never thought possible, a future. "I want that too," Sophia said softly, her voice trembling with the weight of the moment. "I want to be with you, Kingston. I'm not sure where this path will lead, but I know I want to walk it with you." Kingston's smile was a mixture of relief and happiness. "You've already made me the happiest man alive, Sophia. I'm not asking for promises or guarantees. I'm just asking for the chance to be with you, to see where this journey takes us." Sophia felt her heart soar. She had spent so many years questioning her worth, wondering if anyone would ever see her for who she really was. And now, Kingston did. He saw her strength, her kindness, and all the things she had once believed to be flaws. He accepted her, not despite those things, but because of them. "I'm not perfect," Sophia said, her voice soft. "But with you, I feel like I can be." Kingston's hand gently cupped her cheek, and he leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "You are more than perfect, Sophia. You always have been." The words filled her with a sense of peace, a peace she hadn't known she was missing. She wasn't afraid anymore. With Kingston by her side, she knew she could face anything. Together they would build a future, a life that was theirs. She didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but for the first time in her life, she felt ready to take them on. Because with Kingston, she was no longer just the invisible Omega. She was Sophia, the woman who was seen, the woman who was loved. As time passed, Sophia felt the weight of her past begin to lift. Kingston's unwavering support and belief in her had transformed her in ways she hadn't thought possible. The quiet, uncertain Omega she once was seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by a woman who was learning to trust, to love, and to be loved in return. With Kingston by her side, she had discovered strength in herself she never knew existed. She found joy in the little things, their conversations, their shared smiles, the quiet moments of comfort they had together. For once, she didn't feel invisible. She felt like she mattered. The royal court had taken notice of their growing connection. Whispers floated through the halls, some of admiration, others of skepticism. There were always those who thought that an Omega, someone like Sophia, couldn't possibly be a match for an Alpha King. But Kingston had made it clear, it wasn't about power or status, it was about who they were together. And for Sophia, that made all the difference. One afternoon, as they sat together in the palace gardens, Kingston turned to her with a serious expression on his face. Sophia, he said, his voice soft but full of determination, I know what people are saying. I know there are those who think we're an unlikely pair, that you're not good enough for me. But I want you to know something. She looked up at him, her heart beating faster. She had never been one to worry about what others thought, but knowing the pressure on Kingston's shoulders weighed on her too. What is it? She asked, her voice steady, though she couldn't help the flutter of nerves in her chest. Kingston took a deep breath, his hand reaching out to gently hold hers. They're wrong, he said, his voice firm now. You're more than enough. You've always been enough. And I'm not going to let anyone make you feel otherwise. Sophia's eyes widened slightly, her heart swelling with emotion. She had always feared that she would never be enough, that her quiet, unassuming nature would be seen as weakness. But Kingston, as always, saw her differently. He saw her strength, her heart, and the way she had quietly fought to overcome everything life had thrown at her. Thank you, she whispered, squeezing his hand. For seeing me. For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Kingston smiled, his gaze softening. You've always had it in you, Sophia. You just needed someone to remind you. And I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone in this. His words filled her with warmth, and for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had spent so much of her life doubting herself, hiding away from the world, thinking she didn't deserve happiness. But Kingston had shown her otherwise. He had opened her eyes to the possibility that she could have everything she had ever dreamed of, and more. As the days passed, their bond only grew stronger. They navigated the challenges of being in the public eye together, learning to ignore the whispers and focus on what really mattered, their love for each other. Sophia knew there would always be obstacles, that there would always be people who tried to tear them apart. But with Kingston by her side, she felt like nothing could stand in their way. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony overlooking the palace grounds, Kingston turned to her once again. Sophia, he said, his voice serious yet gentle. I know we've talked about the future, but I want to say it now, in front of the world. I choose you. I choose you, not because I'm an alpha king, but because you are everything I've ever wanted. You make me a better person, Sophia. You make me whole. Her heart swelled in her chest, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the future they could have together. I choose you too, Kingston, she replied, her voice steady with conviction. You're not just my alpha, you're my partner. And I'll stand by you, no matter what comes our way. The world outside may have doubted them, but in that moment, none of it mattered. They were together, and nothing could change that. Together, they were ready to face whatever the future held, hand in hand, heart to heart. As the weeks turned into months, Sophia and Kingston's bond only deepened. They had weathered the early challenges of their relationship, and now, they were stronger than ever. The whispers that once surrounded them had started to fade, replaced by admiration from those who had once doubted their connection. The world had begun to see what Sophia had always known, that love was not defined by status or rank. It was about trust, respect, and the willingness to stand by each other, no matter the obstacles. Kingston had made it clear from the beginning that he would stand by her side, and he had kept his word. He supported her in everything she did, whether it was in private moments or in front of the court. He never treated her like she was anything less than his equal, and that was something she had never experienced before. For so long, she had felt small, unnoticed, and unimportant. But with Kingston, she was seen. She was valued. And that made all the difference. One evening, as they sat in the grand library of the palace, surrounded by books and soft candlelight, Kingston looked at her with a soft smile. Sophia, he said, his voice gentle, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. She turned to him, her heart skipping a beat. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she knew it would be important. What is it? She asked, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. Kingston leaned forward, his hand resting on the table between them. I know we've been through a lot together, and I know the future is uncertain, but I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I want to build a life with you, Sophia. A life where we support each other, where we face the challenges of the world side by side. Will you be with me, not just as my partner, but as my equal? As someone who walks beside me, no matter what comes our way. Sophia's heart swelled with emotion as she listened to his words. She had never imagined that anyone would look at her the way Kingston did. He saw her for who she truly was, strengths, flaws, and all, and that was something she had never thought possible. Yes, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I want that too. I want to walk beside you, Kingston. Not because of who you are, but because of who we are together. Kingston smiled, the warmth in his eyes making her heart flutter. You've made me the happiest man alive, he said softly. I will spend every day showing you just how much you mean to me. And in that moment, Sophia realized something she had never fully understood before. Love was not about perfection. It wasn't about fitting into a mold or meeting expectations. It was about accepting each other, flaws and all, and choosing each other every day. With Kingston, she didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to hide behind walls or pretend to be someone she wasn't. She could simply be herself, and that was enough. As they sat together in the quiet of the library, Sophia knew that their journey was just beginning. They had both come a long way, but there was still so much ahead of them. There would be challenges, of course, but with Kingston by her side, she knew they could face anything. For the first time in her life, Sophia felt like she had a future filled with love, hope, and the promise of a life built together. It wasn't always going to be easy, but it would be theirs. And that was enough. They didn't need the approval of the world. They only needed each other.